What we see here is drunk on power. I don't like that you take this position on this bill, so I'm going to silence you. That's a form of slavery. I feel like a slave sometime in this building.
Welcome everyone. My name is Sean, and today we got to revisit the situation going on in Memphis, Tennessee, because as I talked about in my previous video, they passed a stupid ordinance post Tyre Nichols that essentially neutered their police department, and the result of that was a dramatic spike to record-breaking levels of homicide in the city of Memphis, and the state GOP said enough is enough, and they passed a statewide law undoing said ordinance, and that led to absolute chaos in the Tennessee Capitol. Well, now that chaos has gone a step further because apparently trying to stop Memphis from being one of the most dangerous places on planet Earth is not only evil white racism like we heard in the previous video, but it's also the reinstitution of slavery, and that's because the Republicans have a supermajority in the state legislature, and that's essentially like slavery in all the ways that it clearly isn't. But before we get into that, I want to thank everybody who signed up over on actualjusticewarrior.com/join.
Give me the money. Give me the money, okay?
And remind you that on April 27th, I will be in Austin, Texas at MindsFest. Link to tickets in the top of the description.
What we see here is drunk on power. I don't like that you take this position on this bill, so I'm going to silence you. That's a form of slavery.
The absurdity of that clip on its own, just complaining about the fact that you don't have a majority and there's actually a Republican supermajority in the state of Tennessee, is ridiculous on its own. But the fact that she is raging out over this law that they passed at the Tennessee state legislature to undo the horror show that is the city of Memphis, this ordinance that was passed post Tyre Nichols, really hammers home the fact that these people do not actually care about black lives. They only care about them if they're killed by white people or by the police or, God forbid, by a white police officer, because those are the ones that they can make political profit off of. Those are the ones that they can make political gain off of. And we talked about this in the previous video with the representative that was calling for additional Black Lives Matter riots.
Yes, we are emotionally charged. Why? Because it's personal for us. Taylor made this personal the minute he introduced this legislation to target one family and one life that was lost. So yeah, we're going to fight. Dr. King said the riots are the language of the unheard. You ain't saying nothing yet. If you keep silencing us like this, what do you think our district's going to do? We have had it up here. Gloves off.
Now, in that video, that particular representative was talking about how it was a targeted attack on Tyre Nichols, who, of course, is dead already. He passed away. He was killed by Memphis police officers, who are, in fact, being prosecuted, by the way. And the idea that we're going to constantly let murder get out of control in the city of Memphis in order to honor Tyre Nichols, to me, is just not something I would be interested at all in whatsoever. However, that's what these people are actually going for.
Don't tell me this stuff ain't racist. Don't tell me it's not. It is rooted in racism. This was a Jim Crow bill that Taylor brought, and all his Confederates voted for it today.
And they're willing to invoke all of these tropes, accuse everyone of racism in order to get away with it. But the thing is, we're not letting them get away with it, because the reality of Memphis is absolutely horrifying. At the end of me recording my previous video where I talked about how homicide in Memphis actually spiked from about 301 to 397, I started doing some digging into the Memphis homicide statistics. And I want you to understand the scope of the problem in the city of Memphis, and then realize how absurd this woman is by saying that Tennessee's state legislature trying to stop that is the equivalent of reinstituting slavery, and you need to feel bad for her because she feels like a slave.
I feel like a slave sometime in this building.
Now let's give you some perspective so you can understand the scale of the problem. In 2023, the city of New York experienced 386 homicides. This is over a population of 8.3 million. And need I remind you that New York City is actually part of a broader metropolitan area, and during the workday, that population can balloon to almost around 10 million because of all the commuters from the tri-state area coming into the city of New York. But we'll just just leave it at population to homicide because that makes the point strong enough. And by the way, New York City is up in terms of homicide from the pre-Black Lives Matter levels of under 300 a year. So this is an elevated level of homicide in the city of New York. Memphis, as I said earlier, experienced 397 homicides in that very same year. Memphis has a population of about 620,000, and it is decreasing because people are fleeing the city, which means that the city of Memphis has more raw number of murders, despite the fact that their population is over 13 times smaller than in the city of New York. Now, as for the black population, people have pointed out that Memphis is 65% black and New York City is only 23% black. But the thing is, that 23% represents around 2 million black people in the city of New York. Memphis has 620,000 people total, so the black homicide rate is astronomically higher as well in the city of Memphis as compared to the city of New York. It is undeniable how bad Memphis actually is, unless, of course, you're a Memphis state representative representing that area, in which case you pretend that you're the victim and anybody trying to solve these problems is actually the evil white racist.
I'm over it. And all the members standing here are over it.
Now, as insane as that realization of how much more dangerous Memphis is than the city of New York, the per capita homicide rate is even more outlandish because the highest nation in terms of homicide rate in the entire world, or actually technically the second highest nation, although I will explain that a little bit later, is the nation of Jamaica in the year 2023 with a homicide rate of 60.9 per 100,000 residents. Memphis, Tennessee has a homicide rate in 2023 of 63.9 per 100,000 residents, meaning that the city of Memphis is more dangerous than the most dangerous nation in the world, with a tiny little bit of an asterisk. Because if you look at the stats and you don't do the same thing that we do with large cities in the United States of America, and you include cities that have sub 50,000 populations, or nations in this case that have sub 50,000 populations, there is one place on planet Earth that is technically more dangerous than the city of Memphis, and that is a Caribbean nation known as St. Kitts and Nevis, but their homicide rate is 65 per 100,000. So even though it's technically more dangerous than the city of Memphis in terms of homicide rate, it's not by much. And again, they have a population of 47,000. Now again, normally in a regular statistical model, we would not compare populations of cities with sub 100,000 people to populations and cities with above 100,000 people, which is why in many metrics, St. Kitts and Nevis would not make it onto the map, because when you have numbers that small in terms of population, one homicide would make the difference. And to be clear, one homicide taken off of that particular Caribbean nation would make it lower than the city of Memphis. One person is what puts them over the top of Memphis for one of the most dangerous places in the entire world. So when I said the city of Memphis rivals cartel-controlled areas of Latin America, that is 100% true. It is an undeniable fact. And this is a city in the United States of America. This is a city in the great state of Tennessee. Now, even more outrageous, the same day or the day before, near enough that it makes no matter, there was a viral video of a fight in a neighborhood where young girls or teenagers or whatever were brawling with one another. A mother came out of a house and ended up joining into the fight. I'm not going to play this video for you because I will get age restricted, but I will link it in the description along with this article. And that resulted in a quadruple shooting. In fact, you can see people opening fire against each other in this video as there's a dead body on the floor. It resulted in a homicide. And this is not among the concerns of these woke Tennessee representatives, of these black Tennessee representatives, despite the fact that everybody involved in this situation was a black person. Because again, even though Memphis is 65% black, they are overwhelmingly not only the perpetrators of homicides, but the participants in every regard. So the victims as well. So you have an instance right here that resulted in a quadruple shooting. You have 11-year-olds being wounded, somebody being killed. Now, to make matters worse, almost everybody involved in this quadruple shooting is a repeat offender, had a violent criminal history, and And while they did charge the main person who pulled the trigger that ended up resulting in the death of the mother, who again came in to get involved in the fight with murder, one of the people who is on video shooting, they only charged with reckless endangerment with a weapon and set them a bond of $5,000. Again, this is a quadruple shooting, and the Memphis district attorney, whoever's in charge in this particular area, decided that they were going to buy into the story that during this quadruple shootout, one of these people who was participating in said shootout that left 4 wounded, 1 dead, was holding the gun, and it accidentally discharged multiple times into this situation. Where is the outrage right there?
I feel like a slave sometime in this building. I'm over it. And all of the members standing here are over it.
When is she gonna say that she's over the murders in Tennessee? More homicides than days of the year in their city of, again, just 620,000 people. When is she gonna say that she's over the fact that the area that she represents, the people that she represents, are killing each other at a faster rate, or killed each other at a faster rate in 2023 than any other nation on planet Earth? If Memphis was its own nation, it would have been the most dangerous one on planet Earth in 2023.
At what point are we going to truly be a democratic body, respect the fact that every single one of us are represented by the same amount of people in their districts, and we all deserve the same voice and the same level of respect, regardless if we agree or not?
She's talking about how she's the victim, that they're enslaving her, and guess what? She represents the same amount of people as everybody else, and she deserves respect, and people in her district deserve a voice. Well, what about the victims of these homicides? Do they deserve respect? Do they deserve concern? Just because they're not Tyree Nichols, the guy who was killed by 5 police officers in that unicorn incident, do you think that their lives matter? The fact that those people never get mentioned, they never get discussed, and we constantly see her railing against the criminals, talking about how, oh, if you allow them to engage in traffic stops, then that will be a license to commit police brutality and murder, while she's ignoring the more than 1 murder a day in her city, in her district, is absurd in every possible way.
I am tired of the Republican Party expecting us as minorities to do what they want to do, but treat us disrespectfully. Nah, we're not doing that no more. We at this time of session wearing gloves off. And I support any of my members have the right to defend themselves, to not accept disrespect, and we shouldn't expect disrespect from the other side of the aisle.
Again, it's all about how she's the victim as a minority in the Tennessee state legislature. This person who represents constituents, she's elected, she holds political power, does nothing with that political power, is upset that she's treated like a minority. And by the way, when she says minority, she's talking about a racial minority, but they're quite literally the minority party in a supermajority Republican government. So yeah, they don't need to consult with you, and how she feels disrespected, and she feels like the people that she represents aren't being taken seriously. Well, the reason why they're not being taken seriously is because you're their representative and you're not a serious person. Their other representative was the one who called for more Black Lives Matter riots. Use that gloves off language as well. And we've had enough with your nonsense. And by the way, I commend the Tennessee government for actually doing something that I've been calling on Republican governments to do over and over again across this country, which is not just say these are blue cities run by Democrats, 100% true, and they're running them into the ground, again, 100% true, but since we're a Republican state, we're gonna do something about it. They passed this stupid ordinance, murder, which was already outrageously high in the city of Memphis, jumped by almost 100 more, and Tennessee Republicans, rather than just sneering, actually did something. But this is the reaction to them actually doing something.
I just wanted to get it off my chest. Y'all heard it, you can repeat it, but it had to be said. Senator Oliver.
These people with no concern for their own communities, no concern about the homicide problem, the crime problem, which is the #1 problem in Memphis, Tennessee, saying that they're evil white racists, they're reinstituting slavery, the other lady called them Confederates, and we just have to say enough is enough. We're not taking you seriously, and honestly, you should be dismissed when you frivolously throw these allegations of racism around for obvious political gain. When you play the race card like this, people should shun you from society. You should be treated like the garbage that you're actually presenting yourself as. And when you want to be an adult and come to the table and actually have a conversation, actually bring up ideas, actually talk about the real problems rather than your personal feelings of victimization because you don't live in a state that's majority Democrat, then we can have a conversation. But this is asinine. Never did I think we would get to the point where we have representatives legitimately arguing that trying to address homicide in Memphis is evil white racism and actually the reinstitution of slavery. And honestly, the only non-racist thing to do is to let black people in Memphis kill each other as much as they damn well please. No, absolutely not. That's ridiculous. We reject that notion. And thankfully, I'm saying we reject that notion as an audience, but in reality, what really matters is that the state of Tennessee rejects that notion and they decided that they're not going to put up with this. But hey, those are just my thoughts. I want to know what you guys think down in the comments below. If you like this video, then show them by leaving a like, subscribe for more content, follow me on my social media, support me via the support links in the description of this video. This has been me talking about the absolute insane meltdown in Memphis, Tennessee at the legislature level, not over the, actual crime in Memphis, Tennessee. Till next time.